Welcome to Orlando, Florida. Thank you for joining us live this morning. Apologies for, all right.
Thank you to our studio audience who's here with us today.
We have a pseudo-live studio audience. Apologies for being a few minutes late. Such are live events. Anyway, we're in the lobby of Orlando office today. You're watching the Spectrum Reach LinkedIn Live series. Today we're going to be talking about how to build a comprehensive creative plan. Luckily, I am joined by arguably the most intelligent, smartest person that I've had the pleasure of working with in my career. Also the smartest person in our department. I guess that would be a given considering the way I teed that up. Michelle Diedrick, who's been with the company
No pressure for the rest of this.
Michelle Diedrick, who's been with the company for 24 years now. So between, I'm the Vice President of Creative and Production Services. We call ourselves Colonel, and we're here to talk about creative, what goes into building a great plan. Hopefully folks walk away with a few nuggets on what good looks like in this space. And we look forward to answering questions throughout as well. So we wanted to kick things off with the fact that it's almost Super Bowl time. Obviously, it's one of the best times of the year to talk about commercials and creative. I think it's a testament to what commercials have meant in pop culture for as long as they have been around. Folks will watch the game. A lot of folks watch the game just for the commercials. So kind of kicking off with a bit of a softball question, but what's your favorite Super Bowl commercial?
So obviously there's lots that are really entertaining, but there's one that really stood out to me, and it's probably because I am a kind of student of advertising, and it is so long ago that it was square. So it's been the TVs were all still square, and we didn't deliver ads digitally to the providers. We still actually had to ship tapes back and forth and stick them in decks in our master control units. Federal Express ran an ad during the Super Bowl that was color bars and the tone. And then it had just a character-generated scroll down the bottom that was talking about a fictional insurance company and how they had created the world's greatest ad that had the Rockettes and original music by Garth Brooks and all of this great stuff, but the idiot at the ad agency didn't use FedEx to ship it, and so instead that this is what they had to run in their $1 million spot on the Super Bowl. And one of the reasons I love it so much is that it is a brilliant idea. It was creative. It directly talked about why FedEx was important. If you absolutely had to make it there, you used FedEx. And it was an exceptionally cheap piece of creative to produce. Like, they didn't actually have to pay for the Rockettes or Garth Brooks or even a voiceover. I mean, it was creative and smart and drove their point home without spending a fortune.
Do you happen to remember Commercial Crazies? This was a video cassette game from back in the day. I think of this because of FedEx and just what commercials and creative advertising can mean. There used to be a game that was a videotape that you would play, and you would watch commercials like the FedEx commercials, including the really fast talker and all of those taglines that kind of stick with you for decades. And I remember watching that thing on repeat just because of the entertainment value that went along with it. As far as Super Bowl spots go, to answer my own question, Ram Trucks did a spot a few years ago with Paul Harvey as the voiceover. Similar reasons as to why you think that FedEx spot resonated so well. There was not a lot of budget that probably had to go into that other than getting the Paul Harvey monologue to lay on top of a lot of pictures of farmers, and it was done beautifully. And it just kind of tugged on heartstrings a little bit, humanized the farmer. For those of you that are not familiar with it, I highly recommend Googling Ram Trucks and Paul Harvey commercial. It's this lovely speech about why God created a farmer. I'm somebody that hasn't owned a car in 15 years, and I felt like I was drawn into what Ram Trucks mean, what farmers mean to America, what hard work means in general. And it's just something that stuck with me. I think that was 6 years ago now, and that was the single spot that immediately came to mind. In my opinion, when it comes to good creative, if you resonate, if you connect with the consumer in a way that's memorable, then you've done your job. And there's really just a couple key components that go into building a comprehensive creative strategy that ultimately can lead to success and more awareness.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'd say with both of those ads is they're both emotional ads. One is humor, and it makes you laugh, and it makes you have an emotional reaction to it. And then like you said, the Paul Harvey God created a farmer, it tugs on those heartstrings. It gives you a real visceral feeling. And advertising that connects from an emotional level is more likely to leave a lasting brand impression. So, when you're looking at building those things, you have to really think about, what does my consumer care about, and what is going to make an emotional connection with that consumer, as opposed to just, here's a great story I want to tell about my brand.
Yeah. When it comes to that, what do you think is more important, being real and true to what a brand is and who they think they are, and how do you kind of blend that with what you think the consumer wants or needs to hear?
Okay, so I actually think that is one of the key things to do is, and here at Kernel, one of the things that we do is we look at, we talk about customer-centric creative. So how do you develop creative that's talking to the customer? And the first thing you have to do is you have to know who the customer is, and not just where they watch media or how they consume media, or where they're going to research what they're doing when they're coming up with something, but what do they care about? Why or why not? Why do they want to buy a product, or why are they scared to buy a product? Why do they make those business decisions, those micro buying decisions we make all the time? And once we have that list of who they are, then you look at the list of where the brand is and what's authentic about the brand, and then you find those connection points. It's kind of like dating in the sense of, let's find the things that we both like and that we both enjoy, and then let's talk about those. It's like building any relationship. You have to find the common ground. And so I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I don't think that brands should cater to telling customers things that they want to hear just because they think customers want to hear them. Mm-hmm. They need to find those connection points and then really focus on making that message pop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think being authentic is obviously a key component. My own curiosity in this space usually leads to, I can't help but living in New York City and being constantly surrounded by people and advertisements and things that are trying to get my attention. I'm constantly looking at things and thinking about purchase decisions. I can't help but look at people and places and things and think, what led to that person making that decision, that backpack, that pair of gloves, that car, whatever it is, and how brands have such an influence on those things, whether it's directly, like I just want that brand because it's cool, because there's something that resonated, or potentially, indirectly or more subtly, where the seed has been planted and there's kind of general awareness, so that when somebody has a specific need, that they saw a spot or they saw something several months ago, and then all of a sudden there's a need to buy that product, that service, and that it connects. But when you look around, and it's everywhere. I mean, I'm looking at the set here and the logos that are on some of the equipment, and what folks have, whether it's an Apple computer or some sort of PC. Like we're constantly surrounded by brands, and we're constantly surrounded by advertising, and the fact that people want our attention ultimately to influence what we're going to do with our dollars and our time. And it's such a unique opportunity these days, even though it's so saturated, to be able to have that kind of influence, because ultimately we're all going to make those purchase decisions at some point. So how we do that, when, where, and why, and kind of the science behind that we talk about and digest and work on all the time, is really where the fun is.
Well, and I think that there's a lot to that. I think that advertising from a campaign creation perspective, when we're talking about creative today as opposed to talking about placement, is that there is a real balance in the development of creative where you have to rely on the science. I think that the days of just coming up with, I got a really great idea and it's going to be cool, it's hard to, like you said, brands are everywhere and there's messaging everywhere, and how do you break through the clutter? And so when you start with the data and you start with the science and you really learn who your consumer is and what's going to impact them, and what are the things that are going to resonate with them, and then you let that science shift into art. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what so many of the team members here in Kernel do so well, is they're able to take art and develop a very focused message that's going to resonate with the consumers and drive that. And one of the things that we need to look at when we're talking about how the bombardment works is the importance of developing a creative plan where you're reaching consumers with a consistency of message, because that's what we see oftentimes, is that, particularly small brands don't necessarily, and I'm going to take a moment. We talk about brands a lot, and I think that all businesses need to understand they're inherently a brand. And I know that when we work with a lot of our smaller clients, they use the word brand as being like, well, brand is McDonald's, brand is Nike. And I'm like, no, brand is you
Everything.
that owns,
Yeah.
yeah. Like brand is you as a person. Brand is, your plumbing company. It is a brand too. But those businesses need to be looking at how are they communicating in a comprehensive way with their customers, and then being able to build a plan around that.
And
We've got some questions. If you guys want to take them.
yeah,
Sure.
questions, awesome. Let's
So
do
we've got
this.
some feedback about Betty White and the Snickers campaign from 2010.
Yeah, Betty White Snickers campaign. Yeah.
Yep. We had someone asking about the style of your jeans, Tim.
Okay.
True story.
So pause there for a second. Just so Betty White and Snickers and the style of was that an actual question about jeans?
There's not jeans, but there's observation.
Okay.
About jeans.
Okay.
But then we've got some people chiming in with some of their favorite Super Bowl commercials.
Okay.
I will say one of the things, I love the Betty White one, because that's actually an absolute textbook moment of understanding a consumer driving need and developing a campaign specifically about it. Think about it. That ad is not really about Snickers. It's about the fact that you can get really hangry, and then you're not yourself when you're hangry, right? And that's the beauty of that campaign. It is consistently talking about a consumer need and a consumer driver, and then presenting Snickers as the hero in the situation. And that's one of the things we talk to clients about all the time is don't tell the story you want to tell about your business. Tell the story your consumer wants to hear and be the hero of that story. And that is the
Right.
absolute
But
most
you still
perfect
got to be
example of that.
authentic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be authentic.
Right.
Because you have to actually be their hero. Like if you can't fix their problem, then you shouldn't be saying you can.
Right.
So some others we have Lisa tears up at the Budweiser Dalmatian spots.
Budweiser, yes.
Ashley, State Farm and Mayhem is one of her favorites.
So pause there for 1 second. So State Farm and it's Allstate and Mayhem.
It is all State and Mayhem.
So Allstate and Mayhem, interesting story about that. I think two quick things. One, I remember I was at ESPN at the time, and we were doing a bit of a agency tour in Chicago, and we were brought into a meeting to be shown some of the upcoming Allstate creative, and Mr. Mayhem was still being thought of at the time. That and I'm fascinated by what's happening in that space in general between Geico, Allstate, Progressive. It's amazing what insurance has become in regards to a creative messaging juggernaut. I mean, we're talking about insurance at the end of the day. At face value, it's a pretty bland topic, but what they've been able to do with some of that creative messaging is pretty sensational. I think it's also a testament to, if we're talking, ultimately the theme of this live stream is how to build a comprehensive creative plan. Being consistent and taking a chance and going with it and allowing it to truly grow, I think is a key component. Because if you watch the first flow spot by itself, I remember thinking, this is not great. But they were dedicated to making Flo a character, and that she is now a household name, and it has totally evolved into almost its own kind of mini series, similar to Mr. Mayhem as well.
And what you brought up a really key word on creative planning, which is consistency. And when we look at how we need to be developing our creative is really focusing on consistency across platforms. So if you're going to have a message from an advertising standpoint, and you're going to invest in advertising online, and you're going to invest in being on pre-roll, or at this time it's just online video advertising, and you're going to have display ads, and you're going to have television, and you're going to have radio. All of those messages need to work together. They need to be part of the same campaign. I mean, campaigns, not commercials, is a real focus because, what all of the research shows is that when you coordinate your creative, your media becomes more successful. It just is. Your campaigns run better. And what we also see is that there's up to a 53% decrease in the effectiveness of an ad when you run non-coordinated creative. And you know why? It's because you're basically running two campaigns. And so your creative is competing against itself. And even though you're the same brand, it doesn't matter because you're not telling the same story in the same way consistently across all of your platforms. So that's absolutely one of the key things when you're talking about any level of creative planning is consistency.
Do you feel like it needs to start in a certain place? Like where, if you're gonna create the consistency batter, where are you starting? Do you feel like that just kind of varies depending on the client need?
I think it varies depending on the client need, and I also think it varies depending on what choices they're making from a media perspective. I mean, if you're going to have a video-centric campaign, start with video. Tell a really great video story, and then figure out a way to turn that into digital display banners. Turn that into a way that you can make social media posts. You can do infographics. You can tell your story in that consistent way. But you want to start with a primary platform, and then be able to develop your story there and really own it.
I would argue, and this is not just something to push because we're doing this LinkedIn Live, and this is a Spectrum Reach initiative and platform, and hopefully this is adding a lot of value to people's day as they're tuning in and getting some information. But I would argue that 100% of businesses out there, and again, keeping in mind that brands are basically everything these days, 100% should be full in on video. That you need video, obviously, in your social channels. If you've got a video campaign that's rooted in TV, which is still ultimately the #1 brand builder. I know we say that a lot, and I'm not just trying to push the corporate line there, but it's true. I mean, Facebook has a Super Bowl spot this year. So in regards to, where should time and attention be going, social obviously has its place. There's a lot of need to make sure that you are having a comprehensive plan that goes across all channels. But, being able to start with TV, like there's a reason why taglines resonate year after year. There's a reason why specific commercials will never get out of your head. There's a reason why I just refer to them first and foremost as commercials and messages. And I think that's the beauty of what we do, both from a creative perspective, but also what we offer from a media perspective, because you do have the opportunity to be the biggest brand in your backyard, in your region, in your state, or even get really smart and specific with how you're messaging specific people based off of how we're located and how we can kind of dissect with the audience.
Well, and I think that one of the key things about video is that, all of the research shows that it is the most impactful way to educate, inform, and entertain. And it has the highest memory recall from any other advertising medium is video. And television is still the primary video delivery system for most consumers. And so when you're really looking at why you need to have good, strong video, it's because of all of those things. And I'll say that one of the things that you have to really consider, you brought up different platforms for video, it's still really important to have good quality video. Mm-hmm. It's not, we talk a lot about authentic video and stuff that people shoot themselves, and that's great, and it definitely has its place. But consumers want to see that you've invested in the work that you're doing, and they want to see quality video. And, you can see 60% of consumers don't want to interact with a brand after they've had a poor video experience. Why? It's kind of like walking into a restaurant and having the person that's, going to seat you wearing, cut off jeans and flip flops, and, they've got stains on their shirt and doesn't look like they've showered in 3 days. That's not the place you want to eat. If the first impression that you have is of somebody is their commercial and it's not a good one, you don't have a good, impression of that overall brand. Your television commercial should be your hardest working employee.
Go ahead.
We've got a couple of questions, and they're all kind of related, but what are challenges that first-time advertisers might have when brainstorming content for the first time, and how can they be prepared for challenges? But we've got several questions about small business, how to develop their brands, and that sort of thing.
So initial, first question said again, just so that folks can hear if they couldn't hear Travis off camera.
We'll simplify. What can a local business learn from big brand advertising campaigns?
What can local business learn from big brand advertising campaigns? I think simplicity might actually be one of the biggest pieces that a local brand can learn from big brand advertising. You watch a spot like, I use Reese's, and whether it's Reese's Pieces or Reese's Peanut Butter Cups as an example a lot because of how simple and straightforward those campaigns usually are. A, from an aesthetics perspective, and B, from a messaging perspective. I think the smaller brands that we work with usually they have this desire to say everything within their 30 seconds.
I call them laundry list commercials. Like, here's this
Yes.
list of stuff that we want to include in every commercial.
The simplicity of the message can go much further than trying to tell everybody everything immediately. So starting simple and boiling it down to who you are, what's your authentic voice, and then communicating that, again, kind of having an understanding of who your end consumer could be. And also being comfortable with owning what you are and kind of what your place in the community is. I think that can have a huge impact, whether you're brand new and you're bringing something additive from a product or a service perspective, or whether you're somebody that's been in the community for a long time and you want to just draw more attention and be able to have more control to grow your business. I think when you're reflective and you have the ability and the comfort to be honest with what you provide, there's usually something really strong and authentic in there that you can pull to the surface and can make for a really strong piece.
And one of the things that I think that is key when you're doing that reflection is thinking about, you really should only say 3 things. Like 3 things in your ad, like if you're talking about a 30-second television ad. So what are the 3 most important things you want people to know about your business that and you feel passionate about? And when you're looking at that, one of the things that you can always do is, if you're a small business and you do have employees or not, if every single person who walked through your door or started, their online search by going to your website, if they knew these 3 things about my business, I would be this much further ahead in being able to make that connection. So I think that really focusing on what is it that you really want them to know, and being, like you said, keep it simple, boil it down to those few key points.
Yeah. The 3 biggest elements that I keep coming back to when I think about creative, when I think about what influences me, when I think about what influences just consumers in general, and this is the beauty of why this space is a lot of fun right now and why the playing field is as level as it's ever been. If you are authentic to who you are, if you can provide something that is going to entertain or bring value to the conversation, then you have an opportunity to grow your awareness exponentially on just about any platform. I mean, you literally think of those buckets, and if you can check one of them or certainly all of them, it doesn't matter if you're one of the biggest brands in the world or somebody that just started their first social media account. If you're trying to grow awareness and get attention, if you can entertain or bring value and do so in an authentic way, you have as much opportunity as anybody else out there.
So we have one more question, and this one's specific for you, Tim.
Okay.
A gentleman by the name of Fred wants to know if you have a favorite brand of protein bars or any promotional media associated with that.
So I'm not quite sure whether or not, so the question was as to whether or not I have a specific favorite protein bar, and this question came from a gentleman named Fred, which raises a lot of additional questions, but I'll save that for afterwards. So there's a bit of a behind-the-scenes joke here for those that might be watching with no context as to why I might be asked about protein bars. For some reason, protein bars have been something I've always been fascinated with for a multitude of reasons, and it actually goes back to a lot of what we're discussing today. There's something, when you walk into a grocery store or a store like GNC, there's something just about who I am and why I love advertising in general, where I am just kind of infatuated with all of the labels, like what's on the shelves, what are these products, and protein bars for some reason, because they're basically pseudo-healthy candy bars, especially as I've gotten a bit older, has been something that I've gravitated towards and wanted to explore. And I love talking about them for some reason, so I started to post these bizarre reviews of my thoughts on protein bars that actually kind of resonated in a small but fun way that provide a lot of conversation. And I am fascinated from everything from the label, the name of these brands sometimes ranges from the very straightforward to the bizarre. And then, does it provide enough value in regards to taste and also from a nutritional perspective? I would say my favorite protein bar right now is actually from a brand called No Cow. It is a whey protein-less, pea-based protein bar that the texture, like some people get freaked out by protein bars that are not a whey protein bar centric product, but there's something about the texture that I find to be fantastic. And I also appreciate from a branding perspective how they've evolved. You look at some of their original wrappers and then where how their product looks now, and it was basically a kid who wanted to find a plant-based protein bar that started to make them himself, grew the brand, came up with the idea of no cow because there's no cow product in it, and how that's evolved. And the packaging is really smart. I think that they're delicious, but this is a topic that I could spend an entire LinkedIn Live if people actually cared about this. So I think we're actually going to wrap it up because we probably spent more time than we were specifically allotted. For those that tuned in, I hope you got some value out of this. Please hit us up with any additional questions. We look forward to continuing the conversation. We really appreciate everyone's time today. Thanks to everybody that helped set this up.
Yeah.
We work for an amazing team where this is an amazing place to bring your needs to help grow your brand, and we look forward to furthering the conversation. Thanks, everybody.